What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and here we are back again talking about another very bad game review from a gaming journalist. This is not surprising. This is something that I do like to talk about, whether it's on this channel, whether it's on Podcast Now Plus. And really, they were doing fine. I read the article, and everything was going pretty okay until you get to the end of it. It kind of splits itself off in two different ways of why the game isn't, I guess, higher on like the score. And one of it is, I guess, for like replayability, which I definitely don't agree with either. But the big one, and this was the headline, this is literally like in their thing underneath where it says Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. Underneath it, they talk about basically the length of time it is to beat the game, and that being their primary issue. That's what they led with. Their tweet, that's what they led with. Now, the tweet is properly getting ratioed as it should, and you just love to see it. I mean, honestly, you love to see the quote tweets. You love to see the replies. Jacksepticeye even kind of jumping in there to say, like, when did length become such an issue, for these people? So that's what we're dealing with here. If you're out of the know, right? What I'm complaining about here is PC Gamer does a review for the PC port of Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, and they gave it an 8. I mean, I don't care about them. I don't care about the review score, the actual like number. So that's kind of an aside. But their leading thing was, well, the game's only like 10 or so hours, or if you collect everything, maybe you're pushing like 15, and they don't know if that's worth the $60 price. They feel like maybe that hurts the experience. And then again, like the paragraph after the final paragraph of the article, they kind of talk about the replayability and that the game was kind of like a tech test for the PS5. It doesn't feel as necessary to have on PC. That part is okay. I mean, I can understand that. If that's true, I mean, I do think it was kind of a show-off, like, tech test thing. At the same time, I think it's a quality game, plus being like a show-offy, a show-offy kind of thing. So this isn't surprising. I do have a bone to pick with a lot of game journalists, again, if you've watched my videos in the past. But this is something that truly does need to stop. I mean, I'm not kidding around with that. I talk about that all the time on the channel. And when you have a big publication, now PC Gamer is actually one of my the ones that I don't like the most. When I think of the Kotakus of the world, the PC Gamers, there's some pretty, I don't think anybody's as bad as Kotaku. I think PC Gamer is in that kind of like bottom tier of journalism. Doesn't surprise me, but it's still something that you don't like to see, because this is something that, like, the media, like, these people are given early access. These people go to events. These people are like in the circle, in the clique of the game industry, and they think like this. And I just don't think it's a thing we should be thinking in general. I guess you have the right to do it, but I have the right to criticize you quite heavily. So look, when I talk about games coming out, like when I do my why I'm getting or why I'm not getting series, I do like to talk about the length. I do like to talk about the price, because I do think, I mean, flat out, there are people out there, and I've talked about them before, that kind of equate $1 to an hour. I've seen those people, and some of those people I even like in my community. I don't think they're bad people. I do not agree with that whatsoever, but at the same time, people have their own opinions. But this idea that $1 means an hour played. So if the game's $60, some people, right, basically want the game to be a, 50, 60, 70, or 100 plus hour open world, endless kind of thing. My main point has always been, it's quality over quantity. Saying your game is bigger, like the world or anything, more missions, whatever, saying it's bigger than the last game does not immediately make it better. And even like the people I disagree with there, I feel like that can get through to just about anybody. I really do. I think that message gets across. Just because you have more does not mean that more stuff is better stuff. And it's kind of the inverse here with Ratchet and Clank. You're looking at a game that's on the smaller side, but what I like to see, and this is actively what was happening, right? Again, the ratios on Twitter and all that, but some of the replies are going through games, other game examples, some of the Resident Evil games, some of the best Resident Evil games. 5, 6, 7 hours, very, very short games. Recently on the channel, I've been talking quite a bit. I'm kind of in like a kick of those old Transformers games. There's just a thing off the top of my head. The War for Cybertron and Fall of Cybertron, right? Now they had multiplayer, but the base game, oh my God, what do you want to say? 8 hours? Maybe 8 hours, $60, right? Really go back to the PS3, Xbox 360, or Xbox One, PS4 era. And you could find, I mean, my favorite franchise of all time, Uncharted. I can think of maybe my second favorite franchise, Sly Cooper. These games are not long. Even if you do everything, you can get through these games in 10, 12 hours. Does that mean they should not be priced at 60? No, it doesn't mean that. That has always been my point. It does not mean that at all. The length does not equal the dollars spent. It should be the quality. Because again, you can go back into a circle or an inverse. Just because you have a 60-hour game, okay? And yes, like the Assassin's Creed franchise has kind of become like a punching bag for it. I mean, it is what it is. I'm sure you could find other examples, but, an Assassin's Creed game that has 100 hours, or any game, any game that's got more than it needs, and I guess I'm cutting to the end of the story there, right? Just because a game is 50 hours long, if 30 isn't very good or is average, and then 20 is good, well, that affects it. That should affect the score. That should affect your, I think, opinion on it. It does for me, at least. You have the right to think whatever you want, but, just by having 50 hours doesn't mean it immediately equals $50. $50, 50 hours. That shouldn't mean that at all. What if 45 of those hours suck? Well, Ratchet and Clank in 10 hours is better than 50 hours because it's so bloated. Again, not every game, like The Witcher, right? You can think of the best examples, The Witcher. I think of the Mass Effect franchise, except for Andromeda. Like, those games are huge. You can spend 75, 80 hours on like Mass Effect 2 or 3, right? Maybe like 2. 2's the biggest one, okay? You can do that, and they're very quality hours spent in the game. In that case, I guess they're delivering more, right? 75 hours of quality content is technically more than 10 hours of quality content, so I don't know, should one be cheaper? Should they charge more for Mass Effect 2 because there's more hours that are good, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's subjective, but that kind of mindset, I don't know. I don't think it's healthy. I've always disagreed with it. And then, I mean, it doesn't surprise me, again, that you have a gaming journalist site going out there and peddling it. It's just such a, I don't know. I feel like it's, whether it's outdated, I don't even think it's outdated because I feel like these big bloated, like the classic examples we can think of, right? Or even like live service things just kind of existing to exist, right? These things are over the last like 10, 12 years. These weren't out there like 20, 25 years ago. So I feel like this is a relatively new thing. I don't know if it's outdated. I feel like, to be honest with you, it's kind of conditioning. I mean, I think I've said that before too. When you have all of these games that always talk about the length and, okay, well, we're going to be bigger than the last time we did this, or it's double the size, or it's double the missions, or you can play as or whatever it may be. All of these additions, I think it's just kind of classical. Like, you tell somebody that there's more stuff, immediately, I think like an instinct in you is, oh, more must mean better. But it doesn't. Anything in life, right? More of something does not necessarily mean it's going to be better. So again, we're working with kind of like the reverse of that here, where the game's shorter, but, as I've said before, think of any of the games that you like. And I mean, yes, obviously preference is going to be based off the person, but, I've mentioned like a Plague Tale. Plague Tale Requiem is, I think, the best game that came out, or one of the best games that came out last year. It's one of my favorite games of all time. $60, I guess, was on Game Pass, but $60, maybe it was even 70. I'm not 100% sure. The game's maybe 15, 16, 17 hours. So that's not an hour, $1. It's about 2 to 1, right? That's fine though, because the game is so good. I've said it before, like Life is Strange, the first Life is Strange. I don't like the second one at all, but the first one, I've bought it multiple times. That was only like $20, $25. I got the collector's edition though, which I think was like $40. I was willing to pay like more than I needed to for that game because it's so good. And it's like 2 hours each episode, 10 hours in all, right? Like, it just depends on the quality. I can keep giving. The fun thing with this is that I have about infinite examples I could go through of my own personal thing, but also just even like the popular opinion, what people may think of classically as like the better games of all time. I'm sure you could find an almost unlimited example that quality is always like a more important thing. It should be focused on more than quantity. I don't like it, especially when a PC gamer type thing goes rogue like that. I just think that kind of, gives them a bad look for sure, but it's like they're in it and they're thinking that. So like, how does IGN think that? Like, we know how IGN goes into every game thinking that it's like a 7 out of 10, right? So everybody's kind of got their own preconceived things. I guess it's just fun to see what outlets think what. Now we know. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.